Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today, very excited because finally, after all these years, I was able to table at MICE over the previous weekend. That's the Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo 2023. It's one of the biggest independent comic conventions in the country, the biggest in the Northeast. And I've been going there for years, and it's super inspiring to see all the creators following their dreams, making comics just from the passion of it. And I've been applying, as some of you know, because I've mentioned this before, for several years, and I haven't gotten in. But this year I got in, so I went to MICE. I'm going to give you a convention report. I'm going to talk about my experience at the convention as a vendor. And then I'm going to show you the comics that I bought at the show, and then I'm going to show you the incredibly huge pile of stuff that my wife bought at the show, because she bought way more than I did. So I've got a ton of stuff to show you, a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm going to run the video here. I got about 30 seconds of just me walking around so you can get an idea of the space. There's two rooms. I was in the main room, which is what the video is of. There's also a second room across the hallway with more creators, more comics. They had signings, they had panels, they had everything. Overall, it was a really good show for me. I don't do a lot of shows because of my health issues. It's kind of crazy. I only signed up this year, I think, for, trying to do math in my head, I think 5 conventions, right? One of them I had to cancel before I even went because I wasn't feeling well. And then the second show that I went to, I ended up getting sick at the show and had to leave and miss that whole show. So 2 of the 5 shows that I signed up for this year, I didn't even get to attend, which, it's quite a bit of money that I lost on the table fees. But for the shows that I have done over the last 4 years, the 10 shows or so that I've done, MICE was definitely the best show for me. I had a suspicion that'll be the case because it's people that are going to support indie creators like me, people who make comics and self-publish, and they're there to buy that kind of comics. Whereas at a lot of shows you're at, if you're at one of the bigger, more mainstream shows, people are really there to either buy merchandise or meet celebrities, and then there's some people that are there to get back issues. And there aren't that many people that are necessarily there for Artist Alley, right? And then there's other shows, like library shows are really good for creators like me because we're most of the people that are tabling, but they tend to have very small attendance, right? So this was a mix of a big attendance, but all people that wanted to support indie comics. So it was each of the 2 days of the show, Saturday and Sunday, so a 2-day show. Each of the days was the best that I had done, was better than I've ever done at any of the show before. Saturday was better than Sunday, not just for me, but I talked to some other people, and just in general, Saturday seemed to be a lot better for most people. But I actually did pretty well Sunday as well. Again, better than I've done at any of my previous shows. So no complaints there. It was very difficult for me, logistically and physically. I ended up, I can't really sit because of various nerve issues that I have, and so I had to stand. And I'm, as you can tell, a beefy man. So it's really hard on my feet. So one day is usually about all I can do. So by the end of the second day, my feet were pretty rough shape, just physically really hard. My wife had to drive me in, so it basically took her whole weekend away. So logistics were really difficult for me. I probably won't be doing any more multi-day shows unless that I'm able to get like a hotel on site, just because it's just too hard for me to do physically. But I don't regret doing it. Met some great people. I had one of my YouTube viewers came to see me. That's the second show in a row that's happened. So really exciting, and I'm grateful and humbled and kind of amazed actually that people are not just watching it but actually coming to meet me. So thanks so much for coming. And the other thing that was really great about the show is that I did sort of a pared down selection of the comics. I was desperately hoping to get the Crime Busters Volume 1 trade collection out before the show. This was going to be the big debut of the trade. And I'll never know how well I could have done if I had had that, because I didn't have it. Couldn't get it done in time, That Kickstarter ended and the book's almost finished, but I was like really rushing to get it done, and I realized that the printer just wasn't going to be able to turn around fast enough. So I kind of stopped like that intense work on it. But it'll, for those of you who did back that, it's coming on schedule. Everything's on schedule. I'll have that to the printer within the next 2 weeks. But I didn't have it at the show. So what I did was I brought some of the individual issues of Crime Busters that I have. I don't have all of them because I'm sold out of some of them. Since I knew the trade was coming, I short printed some of the issues. But I brought the ones that I did have. I brought the Crime Buster 100-page giant 80th anniversary special. And then I brought Cthulhu vs. Uncle Sam 1 and 2, the regular covers. And I brought Quest number 1, regular cover, and the RPG edition, which has the playable module in the back where you can play through the comic, the story from the comic in your own home game if you're a D&D fan, right? So I brought, those are the comics that I brought. And what I was excited about was I sold at least one copy of everything that I brought. Everything. So at least one copy of every issue of Crime Busters that I had out, at least one of each of the Cthulhu vs. Uncle Sam, which is actually still my bestseller. Quest number 1 did well, not as well as I was hoping or sort of expecting with a fantasy draw, but the RPG edition was very popular. And a big surprise to me is I actually sold several copies of the Crime Buster 100-page giant, which was great because I messed up the orders on that. I won't get into all of it, but I ended up with a whole giant stack, way too many of them, and they're very expensive to print. So I was left holding the bag, and I'm still holding the bag on that. But it's a really cool comic, and so I was really excited to sell some, not just to get some of my money back, but because it is one of the coolest things that I've worked on. So it was really cool to do that. So, I mean, all in all, really good show. Again, difficult for me physically, but I've been trying to get in for 5 years, so I was really excited. Because I was behind the table for the whole show, I had almost no chance to actually look at other people's tables. So right at the end of the second day, when it was really dying down, my wife took over the booth for me long enough for me to do a quick walk around. I only spent about 20 minutes walking the floor, which means a lot of booths I didn't even stop at, and which stinks because I can spend a long time at Mice looking at all the cool stuff and checking out all the things that people are making and talking to the artists. That's kind of the fun. In this case, I had a very small budget that I had set for myself, and I knew that I was looking for comic books. And that'll make more sense once I'm showing you stuff, but a lot of people have graphic novels, they have little mini comics, they have odd-sized things, magazine-sized things, all different shapes and sizes and ways that you can do sequential storytelling, but not necessarily that many other people that just had classic individual issue comic books, and that's what I was looking for. So it didn't take me too long to walk around, and I did pick up some, and I want to show you what I got, because there's some really cool stuff here, even though I only got a few comics. I was really pleased with what I was able to get for my very small budget. So I'm going to start with this. I've talked about this series multiple times. It is Bad Cop versus Good Cop, The Lost Fortune of Boston. I think that's the Lost Fortune. I have to ask them next time, because I do know the creators of this. It's Calvin and Niall Hennick. You may remember, because I've mentioned them several times before. I've seen them at Mice before, and not just Mice, but several conventions I've seen them at. Niall started doing this series when he was 9 years old, so I have the first print of Bad Cop versus Good Cop #1, which was photocopies that were stapled together, like black and white photocopies stapled together. Well, now they're at the point, 3 years later, he's 12 now, and they're doing the comic, printed by the same printer that I use, color covers, so it's much more professional, and you can see how far along his art's come. He's starting to experiment with page layouts and storytelling. Like, here's a cool sequence of panels where the panels themselves don't necessarily seem to be in a classic order, but you can read the word balloon and you can follow the word balloon around like a maze. So he's doing some really cool stuff. And again, he's still only 12 years old. His father, Calvin, writes the script. They do it Marvel style, old school Marvel style. So they'll come up with a story together, and then Niall draws it, and then once the art's done, then Kelvin does the scripting on top of it. This is issue 3. They have 5 issues now. That just did a trade. Since I already had issues 1 and 2, I got issue 3. And I'll be seeing them actually in just a couple weeks, because I'm going to be at a show in Athol, Mass on October 14, and they're going to be there as well. So I'll probably pick up another issue of them, of this from them at that time. So it's really cool to see them. Let's see. Here's another book. Did not catch the name of a lot of the creators. So this is an interesting one. It was priced at $1, so I was like, okay, you had me at $1. It's called The Original 9 Preview Edition. Now this is actually from it's from Larry's Comics, which is a comic store that used to be in Lowell and closed during the pandemic. This was actually printed back in 2005. And it's pretty good. It's like it says, it is a preview. It's like an ash can, so it's got it's got pencils, but they're not inked or colored or anything. And it's like a 0th issue sort of preview story about some people in the 17th century, and something happens to them that gives them superpowers, weird magical superpowers, and then you can tell from the rest of the content that the series is going to take place in the present day, but Ashcan didn't get that far. So I don't know whether this ever actually came out, like the finished edition, or if there are any other issues. I don't know. I've never seen it or heard of it, but and Larry's isn't around anymore. But for $1, it's cool. Trying to think what order to show these to you. There's a couple things here I know some of you are going to really dig. All right, so this is by Philip Clay. I know that because his name is in big letters on the cover. It's called Nadia, Chapter 1. He had an interesting publishing strategy is not the right word. But the way he does it is he basically, and I didn't talk to him about this, but just judging by the fact that this is issue 1, it's dated this year, but he had like 8 issues out, and you could buy the full set for the whole story. So it seemed as though he was basically, it was serialized, but instead of getting a trade, you could just buy the whole set all at once, or just the individual issues. I'm not quite sure how it works, but the basic story is kind of like Labyrinth. This girl wakes up and her baby brother is being kidnapped by an evil witch and who disappears. That's the story here in issue 1. It's got this cool art style, some of the interior art, and there's some really cool use of, heavy blacks, which I like. You can see the brother's been replaced by a changeling on this page. So these comics were, just about all of them were $5. A couple of them are $6. So really nice quality print job here. So it's really, really cool. And then let's see. All right. Here's one. It's Honey number 1. I thought it was a really, really cool graphic design. I just love the design of this, the font, the colors, how this just again is very bold graphically, and it's got the honeycomb here with the logo and the strip covering her eyes. It just is very, very bold, and it's a really cool, interesting story, which it's about honeybees. It's a hive of honeybees, except for the honeybees are all drawn to be like young women. So they do all the things honeybees do. It's just, instead of drawn in bee form, they're drawn like women. And that's the case. Like, there's one part where there's a butterfly, which I can't show because there's a little bit of nudity. But like, there's these wasps that show up and kill a couple of them. So it was really good, very unusual story, but again, I just love the design. The art's really cool, so I really enjoyed this one. This is one of my top picks from the day for me. Um, okay, I got this is Future number 10, and this is like an anthology. I'm trying to see what the creator's name is here. Tommy Musturi, and he's got really sort of vibrant colors and art style, and his art's very um, he has sort of different styles and different pages, but it's a very underground comics aesthetic. Here's sort of the rainbow colors on this sequence, and then there's like it's sort of like classic sort of underground art. So there's different styles, all by the same guy. What really drew me to this issue, because he had several issues. This is issue 10. He had a bunch of them, and the covers and stuff are done with different designs. And this is like a classic 1960s Dell cover. So I just love the font, the whole thing. It just screams like 1960s Dell. So I love the bold colors. You know how much I like my bold colors in comics, but combined with the retro design, I had to get it. I'm not a big sort of like underground comics guy, and this definitely has a strong underground feel. It's interesting, if you take some of the underground sort of art stuff, like from the 60s and 70s, but give it this like super like high saturation coloring. Basically, this is what that is. So again, story wise, this is not really my jam. I know some of you are really into that stuff, but it was just really cool packaging for me. So I really liked that a lot. And then finally, I know some of you are gonna really dig this. I don't know if you're gonna like it as much as the Mangull story that I showed last year, but I think some of you are really gonna want to track this down, which may or may not be difficult. It's called The Final Dot. Yes, it's a little dot parody comic, and it's done in a retro style. They had made the paper so that it looks sort of like retro. It's got the old dimensions, so it's a little bit wider than a regular comic. And there's like, on the cover, instead of saying Harvey, it says Inky Comics, and it says The Final Dot instead of little dot. But on the inside, they have like, it's like a little dot. And then the story here is basically little dot is just obsessed with dots, and over the course of the story she kind of starts going crazy in her obsession with dots, and I just really love the story. She gets like weirder and weirder and more menacing, and then she notices that the comic is printed with the old-fashioned dot coloring, and so she reaches into the comic and she starts pulling the colors out of the pages and gets very meta. She starts stripping the world of colors and everything, and then I'm spoiling some of the story, but yeah, she basically just goes mad with dot power, and so little Lotta has to stop her, and Lotta sees this vintage fake ad for the Daisy air rifles like they used to have back in the 40s and 50s, and you can see here she reaches through the page and grabs the rifle and pulls the rifle through to the other side of the page. So it's very clever. It's really cool. They've got fake ads. Like, this was originally an ad to win a trip to Disneyland, but they changed it to win a trip to Ponyhenge, which is a fantastic joke if you happen to live like very close to where I live, because in the town of Lincoln, Mass, there's this place called Ponyhenge, which is just a field that has like old like rocking horses that have been like dumped in it, and so it's become like a thing called actually, if you look online, it'll be like listed as an attraction, but it's just like it's just someone dumped some old things in a field, and people started calling it Ponyhenge as a joke. It's gotten a, anyway. The packaging, the attention to detail, the meta ness. It's super fun. It's very dark but very funny. I just absolutely loved it. Loved it. As soon as I saw it, I knew I had to get it. Um, but yeah, really loved it. Now, I'd like to tell you who it's by, but I don't know. So when I bought the comic, they gave me a bookmark, and the creator explained that when they made the comic, they forgot to put credits in it. So they printed up a bookmark that has the credits on it. But somewhere when I was moving all my comics around after the show, it must have fallen out. So I don't know. If you look online, Google The Final Dot and Inky Comics, you may be able to track it down. I hope so, because um, I got some really cool stuff at the show, but this was like the bee's knees for me. This was like top notch. So, um, yeah, all comics are kind of hit and miss, a matter of taste. Indie comics in particular, because all the indie creators have such a specific personal vision for the comics. That's what makes it so exciting. But it also means that there's a lot of variance. It's not like these mass-produced Marvel and DC books where you're going to get, you basically know within a certain set of parameters you're going to get something in this area, whereas with the indie comics you can get anything. And so I buy a lot of indie comics that are cool, and I love the fact that people are making them, but that doesn't mean I always like the stories or think the comic itself is that great. I think it's great that they're making it, right? But when I get stuff that are legitimate, I'm like, this is really cool. And I got several of those at this show. It makes me very happy. But Little Dot, Final Dot, fantastic. Honey, excellent. Nadia, very good. So like some really good stuff. So that's all I got at the show. I'm gonna very quickly, because we're already at over 20 minutes, and my wife got like 8 times as much as I did. So I'm gonna go through her stuff real fast, and I haven't looked too close at most of it, so I can't really even explain what a lot of it is. But I'm gonna do my best. So here's just an overview of stuff my wife got. First of all, she got a set of handmade greeting cards. My wife makes greeting cards, and she makes a lot of great cards. So that's something that's an interest. She got some mini comics. Now, mini comics are made by, you can basically print out 1 or 2 pages, usually one, and then you've drawn on it really small in a grid pattern in such a way that you can fold it all up into a little comic book that you can then open and read. So she got some of those. This is called Fixing the Blahs by L.B. Lee, who I've seen at several of these shows. Green Thumb by Ella Joklik. And Frog by Day, Frog by Night by Alexandra Gallant. Or Gallant. Not sure. So those are little mini comics. I love the industry. I think they're really cool. I'm a snob because I'm so old school for format. I like comics that are regular comic size. It's very hard for me to store these in a way where it's easy to keep from losing them and also like file them. They're just so small, so I don't tend to buy them much. I do have a few. Now my wife got a bunch of other mini comics, but they're bigger than those. They're more professionally printed. They're just at various smaller sizes, right? And some of them are really excellent looking. Very well done, good art. Here's Mara and the Whale. Drawing Bridges. Little Beasts. I do like the colors. I'm a sucker for bright colors. Jenny B and the Wishmaster Demon. That's a really cool cover. The Wishmaster Demon is almost a little too subtle for me, but coloring wise again, but a really, really cool cover. Dig that one. Coda, a Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess fan comic. So there's a mashup you maybe didn't realize that you needed. Curfew, a comic about protest and solidarity. So that's cool. Really good cover. Really like that one. Nemesine's Well. My wife really likes stories that have what's the word I'm looking for? Like fables, things that have rooted in mythology. And these comics with sort of a limited color palette are very interesting. Like here's a look at the inside with the different subtle shades of blue. Again, very different from the stuff that I'm drawn to. I think it's really cool, but my instinct is always bright colors, lots of contrast between foreground and background. There's another mini comic, Rogan's Aphasia. Starting to get some of these bigger. Some of these are actually regular comic size. I'm almost to those. Fishbones, Part 1. Wish I could tell you a little bit more about these, but if I could, this video would then be like incredibly long. Witches, Dragons, Magic, and Cats. 3 short stories by Carrie Peach. Witches, Dragons, Magic, and Cats. 3 stories. So there's four things in the title, but only 3 short stories. So one of these has at least 2 of those. Really nice back cover. The World is Made of Cheese. This is a really cool book. I almost bought this one myself. Folklore. Imagine myths and legends, invented instructions, incantations for unreal rituals. So it's sort of like, invented mythology. And so it's not sure I would call it a comic book, but it's comic adjacent. Each page has like a really cool illustration with like a little bit of writing that goes with it. Like this one here for this picture, the story they've created to go with the art is, or maybe vice versa. If you find yourself bewitched, create a witch bottle full of thorns, bent needles, and your own hair. Bury it near the hearth of the home. The needles will cause the witch pain, and the heat from the hearth will hasten her end, breaking the spell. Completely, again, person has completely made this stuff up. Closer to a regular comic size, The Unusual Journey of an Ex-Sorcerer's Apprentice. The first 3 chapters. This is Ellie Earhart. Kem is a sorcerer's apprentice until a certain incident with some broomsticks. That's from Fantasia for all of you younger people. Kem's made a huge mistake and now must deal with the consequences. This is the beginning of her story. This one's really cool. My wife told me a little bit about it. Song for Medusa. This is a story about Medusa falling in love with a blind woman. So someone is immune to her Medusa powers. And then this here, which is called Stilt. Now this is a regular full-size comic. And I didn't buy it only because my wife would have bought it before I went around to the table. Love the design, the graphic design. Love the art. Again, the colors. A lot of comics these days, they'll have like a matte finish and sort of subtle colors. Um, so the inside has very bright colors, though. So this looks really cool. It's obviously science fiction of some kind. So that looks cool. Names Rico Tavares and C.A.P. Ward. Names are familiar, but I'm not sure why. So that's only part one, guys. That's just the mini comics. My wife also bought a huge pile of books and graphic novels. So this is almost like going to mice, because I'm not saying she bought something from every table, but you're getting a real good look at the variety of stuff that you can get at mice or similar shows. So if you're in Baltimore, the Small Press Expo, Toronto has TCAF, which I think is the Toronto Comics and Art Festival. I'm not sure about that. There's also one in San Francisco that's really big. Okay, so here is a super scary Narwhaloween. A super scary Narwhaloween, a narwhal and jelly book. These must be narwhal and jelly right here. Oh. Oh yeah, it says glow in the dark cover. I was like, oh, it feels like that glows in the dark. Yep, right there. So that's cool. This one she got. It's a little like children's book. Got this for our nephews. This one's called Ben, and this was a someone basically wrote a thing about what a big a-hole this person named Ben that they know is. My wife read this while we were at the show and thought it was absolutely hilarious. So, Ben. Here's something that she actually got from me. It's a book rather than a comic. It's called Draw Stronger, Self-Care for Cartoonists and Visual Artists. So it's all about how to, physically and mentally keep an even keel when you're working on comics all the time. Kid Chrysalis, Butterfly Warrior. See, this is a small one. And then this one, Callisto, which is a really big one. Again, inspired by Ovid's Metamorphoses, which is something I know my wife likes quite a lot. Of Thunder and Lightning by Kimberly Wang. Art Wars, which I actually read. This is one where every page, sometimes multiple pages, is the same panel over and over again, just with different word balloons. Going Under, a very striking cover. Curious about the inside. It's grayscale. Going Under. The Moth Keeper. This is a really hefty book. This is kind of like manga size. It's thick but small, but it's almost manga dimensions. The art's really cool. I like this style quite a bit. Other Ever Afters, New Queer Fairy Tales. This is an anthology. Wash Day Diaries. This is about 4 women in the Bronx and their connection. A lot of the stories they tell each other, and their lives are connected through their visits to hair salons. So there's a lot of stuff about hair. here. I did a horrible job of explaining that. The Faint of Heart. These all look very well done and very good. A couple smaller ones slipped into the pile here. Elegy in Bone. This is a little mini comic. It's not quite full size in terms of dimensions, but it's a comic book rather than a graphic novel. So is this one here. It doesn't have a title on it. Just has an image on the front and an image on the back. Back. Front. This looks very Barry Blair to me. Reminds me of some of the Elf Lord covers I used to have. Back in the 80s. Power and Magic, the Queer Witch Comics Anthology. Again, another anthology, which actually neither my wife and I are big fans of anthologies. Boy Named Rose. This is about a transgender person in Paris in right after World War One. Great color and use of lighting on the cover. And then finally, believe it or not, we're at the end here. I saved this one for last. I've heard about this book, I think, before, but it's fantastic, and I know you guys are going to love it. It's called Terms and Conditions. You can see the cover is an homage to the Marvel 25th anniversary cover from X-Men 211, right? Inside, each page is basically done in a different art style. Like, this is obviously from The Dark Knight Returns. And the page opposite is Astro Boy. And then when you turn the page, it's John Byrne. And then Peanuts. And there's like Neil Gaiman's Sandman and Dilbert. And there's like a Steve Ditko like question, or I don't know if that's actually Mr. A even. But it goes through all of these different art styles, all done by the same person, right? There's like Adventure Time and Arcrom next to each other. But what the story is this is actually, the whole book is illustrating Apple's terms and conditions. The massive document that you sign like when you get an iPhone. That's it. That's the whole book is just illustrating in these fun ways this ridiculously huge thing. So hilarious, fantastic. And that was it. That's Mice. So let me know what you think down below of all of this stuff, and I'll see you next time.